Good afternoon, everyone. iTech India welcomes all the participants to today's National Distance Learning Seminar. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box. All the questions will be taken up at the end of the session. Today's topic is hematological manifestations of HIV in CLHIV, and the speaker is Dr. Jagdish Chandra. Dr. Jagdish Chandra is the former program director at PCOE Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital. He was a faculty member for development of IMNCI HIV modules for doctors, IMNCI, strengthening of provider-initiated testing for HIV of NACO Clinton Foundation. He was also a member of expert group for developing guidelines of HIV infant feeding, co-investigator for a UNICEF project on support for nutritional needs of children made vulnerable due to HIV, focus on improving IYCF practices, and expert group member for developing nutrition counseling training module for PLHIV WHO. In addition to his contribution in HIV, he was also looking after pediatric hematology and thalassemia daycare center as an in-charge and has been an expert group member for developing guidelines for treatment of ITP, treatment of aplastic anemia, blood component therapy, prevention of nutritional anemia. He has received WHO fellowship for pediatric hemato-oncology at St. Jude Cancer Research Hospital, USA. Thank you, sir. We welcome you to today's session and request you to kindly start the session.
Thank you for very kind words of introduction. Just to let the viewers know that currently I am working in a institute called Postgraduate Institute of Medical Science and Research and ESI Burdell Hospital, Basai Darapur, New Delhi. This is after my superannuation from Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital in August. I joined here last month. So it's a very interesting topic, hematological manifestations of HIV infection. And as we know that HIV infection itself has multiple facets and leads to multi-system involvement. So there are hematological manifestations as well. They are encountered in children and adults, both infected with HIV. So looking at what are the multiple facets of HIV, just to recapitulate, we know that it is chronic HIV infection state, which is punctuated by multiple opportunistic infections. There is undernutrition, which results from chronic disease, recurrent OIs, or recurrent other infections, inadequate intake because of several reasons, chronic liver disease, which could be both hepatitis B or C, and then treatment related. ART is there, quite a few patients required antitubercular treatment, cotrimoxazole prophylaxis is there, and then whole lot of immune mechanisms are there to interfere with the system working properly. So the hematological issues that you encounter in these patients are anemia being the commonest, related to deficiency of macronutrients, anemia of chronic disease. It could be drug-induced or related to opportunistic infections. Then there are a whole lot of abnormalities of coagulation and thrombosis. There is bicytopenia, pancytopenia, or thrombocytopenia, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, and lymphoreticular malignancies are also part of the multiple hematological problems that these children with HIV infections do encounter. So if you look at anemia in HIV infected children, there are certain series from India, and they have looked at several different aspects of HIV infection and anemia. So this series of 48 children from Delhi, it was not very clear. This is published in 2015, but it was not clear when exactly this data was collected. So anemia prevalence was 75% in this, and the children were moderate to severe undernutrition, and stunting was also present. The RBC morphology, they documented a lot of children with normocytic normochromic anemia, that is 63 to 64%, and just you can see macrocytic is just about 2.8%. In some children, bone marrow examination was done, and it was found to be hypocellular in 4 of them out of the 6 and hypercellular in 2 of them. So age, gender, clinical stage of HIV, they were not a risk factor for the development of anemia. And immunological stage was a risk factor for anemia. ART was found to be protective for development of anemia, but not for the development of severe anemia. This is 2005 data from Bombay, 50 children, again 70% prevalence of anemia. And in this study, all patients with anemia had microcytic hypochromic blood picture. Then they had some leukocytosis, lymphopenia, and thrombocytopenia in 10% of the patients, and combination of leukopenia and plus neutropenia in one patient. This is from Calcutta, Bhaumik and Banerjee, data collected in 2011 and 12. Anemia again 69%, thrombocytopenia 11%, and you can see they have also highlighted as the stage of the disease progresses, the anemia prevalence goes up and up and up. So from 47% in stage 1, it goes to 93% in stage 4, and lymphopenia gradually declines in prevalence. So 7.8% here, and it goes up to 44.8% in stage 4. This is a large data on 240 children from, I think, yeah, it is Bangalore and Chennai children are included in this. Dr. Anita Sheth and her team has worked in St. John's Medical College, Bangalore, 240 children. The median age 7.7 years. WHO is staging 80% in stage 1 and 2 and only 20% in stage 3 and 4. Some of them were receiving, I think proportion of children on ART at baseline was 43%. And nutrition status, you can see 40% stunting, underweight 45%, 23% wasted, and children with low BMI another 29%. So anemia prevalence in this study was 47%, with severe anemia being present in 6.7%. They highlighted the micronutrient deficiencies. Iron deficiency, it is iron deficiency, not iron deficiency anemia in 64%, vitamin A around 18%, and folate and B12 deficiency in very small number of cases, B12 in 6% of the cases. So they correlated the factors, and in bivariate model, stunting, CD4 less than 25%, detectable viral load above 400 copies, and absence of ART and vitamin A deficiency were the risk factors. But in multivariate model, stunting status still had that low CD4 count, detectable viral load, and vitamin A deficiency. They had odds ratio 1.9 to 3.2 odds ratio. If these features were present, the chances were high of having anemia in the person, in the individual affected. So this is another latest data from Odisha, data collected in 2017 to 19, published in 2020. Only anemia prevalence was just about 29%. This is from Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital, our own team. They looked at the anemia prevalence in children. This is not published yet. The data was collected in 2015-16. And anemia prevalence was looked at in newly diagnosed cases and cases who were on ART for at least 6 months. So in newly diagnosed cases, the anemia was in 75%, while 55% of those who were on ART, they were found to be anemic. Rest of the things we will take on this slide subsequently as well. So if you compile all these studies, you can see the anemia prevalence over the years has remained quite high. This Sheth et al. Is a lot of cases were on ART, and this is only one data which shows a very low prevalence, but to me it appears maybe it's a geographical difference and difference of the what stage patients have been included. And it's not that anemia prevalence has gone down significantly over the years, because our own data of 15-16 shows 75%, and similarly 11-12 is 69%, and it's unlikely that it would have gone down from 75 to 30% in just about another 5-6 years, or rather 2-3 years only. So this study by Sheth et al. They also correlated the anemia with several factors. What is the etiology, and they noticed iron deficiency in 66%. But note here that anemia of inflammation was diagnosed in 58%. Vitamin A deficiency was present in 26%. And when iron supplementation was given to these children, the median HB over a 3 months period increased just from 10.4 to 10.9. And those who took it for 6 months, it increased to 11.3. So it's a small increase compared to what we usually have. So either this response was hampered because of anemia and depression being present, or the iron deficiency was not truly the cause of anemia in these children. Now, in our series, we observed that in the group which were newly diagnosed, we had B12 deficiency 40%, folic acid deficiency also about 40%, iron deficiency in nearly all cases, 96.29, that is just 1 out of 27 cases did not have iron deficiency, and anemia of chronic disease we diagnosed just in 1 case. So while on treatment, what we observe is that B12 deficiency increased, and same way folic acid deficiency also increased. Iron deficiency almost same, and anemia of chronic disease also almost same. So explanation for this B12 and folate deficiency prevalence rising in those cases who were on ART probably is because they had low levels from the beginning, and when their weight improved on ART, the deficiency got unmasked. So that is a probable explanation for B12 and folate deficiency in these children. So, and with this, you can notice here also that in group A, that is newly diagnosed, the MCV was 80, and which increased in group B to 100. This is a very significant difference in these patients at follow-up. Iron status has been studied in other countries as well. This is a series from Cambodia and Thailand. So here, of almost 300 children, the iron deficiency was just in about 2%. Iron deficiency and thalatrate combined was in 5 children. And lot of anemia was ascribed to anemia of chronic disease, as well as thalassemia trait being the cause of anemia in these individuals. This is a systematic review and meta-analysis of presence of anemia in HIV infection. 15 studies were included in this for prevalence of anemia. 7 studies were with controls, and you can see that those children who were HIV positive, they had 2.7 to 3.9 odds of having anemia as compared to those children who were not having HIV infection. And these studies are in tropical settings, and similar data is also there in the Western setting. The risk is as high as 1.14 to 33 times odds of having anemia in children when they were HIV infected compared to those who were not HIV infected, and combined risk is 4.5. So anemia prevalence was quite significant in these studies. And they also, this meta-analysis and systemic review also highlighted that as in adults, higher anemia prevalences were reported in children with more advanced disease. Anemia less than 8 gram or 9 gram per deciliter, different cutoffs were taken in different studies, was identified as an independent risk factor for disease progression and death in 4 of the 5 longitudinal studies in children. And we know that CDC and WHO both have anemia as an indicator of a moderate disease currently. As in adults, insufficient production is the most important pathogenetic mechanism of anemia. Microcytic hypochromic abnormality appeared to be more common in these, with prevalence ranging from 12 to 100% and 20 to 100% respectively. Pancytopenia was observed in 11 to 20%, and notably, dyserythropoiesis was generally noted to be more common in later stages of HIV disease. So these were the conclusions drawn from this systematic review. Anemia has been associated with OIs, and this is a study though in adults. Prevalence of anemia in hospitalized HIV infected patient was 55%. mild, moderate, severe in 41, 11, and 2.6% respectively. And predictors which were independently associated with anemia were CD4 count less than 50%. The odds was 6.3, and CD4 50 to 100 again 6.3 odds ratio in these individuals who are having anemia. Co-infection with TB again odds ratio of 2.7, and penicillium marnifi co-infection the odds ratio was 7.1. So anemia is associated with OIs. But viral replication, it has been seen. Anemia was independently associated with young age, advanced HIV disease, and low CD4 percentage, and proportion of children who attained viral suppression. In fact, this is the other way around. They have seen the effect of ART on viral suppression in the presence of or absence of anemia. So in anemic children, the viral suppression up to less than 400 copies per ml could be obtained in just about 53% compared to non-anemic children where it was in the 86% of the patients. And of course, the difference in clinical and immunological response did not reach statistical significance. So this is a study from Uganda in pediatric age group patients. Anemia has been seen to be a predictor of mortality. This is a very large series from Oxford University. I could not lay my hands on the full article here. This is on 2,500 children, and in the 3,769 child years at risk, that is follow-up period of these patients, 357 deaths occurred, and what they observed, the CD4 percentage and CD4 cell count were the strongest predictors of mortality, followed by weight for age and hemoglobin. Young children who were both severely malnourished and anemic, they had high mortality regardless of CD4 values, particularly those aged between 1 to 2 years. By contrast, CD4 percentage and CD4 cell count values predicted low mortality level among either children older than 5 years or those younger with neither severe malnutrition nor anemia. So anemia is quite prevalent. Mostly it is because of the underproduction. Anemia of chronic infection is quite common. It is related to advanced stages. And more importantly, it's important to realize that in presence of anemia, the viral replication goes on, and suppression with ART is also not to the desirable levels, and anemia could be a predictor of mortality. So what happens to anemia while the patient is on ART? Usually or commonly, the undernutrition and anemia improve on ART. You can see here the underweight, stunting, undernutrition, and anemia prevalence is going down over a period of 12 months. So from baseline, say anemia declined from 37.5% prevalence to 18%. That's nearly 50% decline. And same way, the underweight, stunting, and undernutrition also declined. Same here, you can see the prevalence of mild, moderate, severe anemia declining over a period of 1 year is on ART. Anemia prevalence before ART in this study from Ethiopia was 41%, and it declined to 11.4%. But importantly, macrocytic normochromic anemia was more common after ART than before ART initiation. Now the picture is changing when anemia is being encountered on ART. So this graph will tell you macrocytic anemia becoming more common, and say in this over 6 months period, only 6 months period from baseline, the macrocytic normochromic picture, say from about 10%, it has increased to something like 27, 28, but just touching 30%. So the rest, microcytic, etc., they all declined, and macrocytic becoming more prominent on ART. This was the slide that we saw previously also. This is from our Kalavati Saran data. The macrocytic anemia becoming, the MCV becoming more compared to the ones who were at the beginning enrollment, and here on ART, the macrocytosis occurred in these individuals. So 40-fold increase in the risk of macrocytosis noted when they were treated with zidovudine. Macrocytosis was sustained for at least 2 years following the cessation of zidovudine treatment in 37% of the patients. These are important observations to understand the pathogenesis of anemia in patients with zidovudine. So zidovudine is blamed, and you can see here that on ART, the hazard ratio of having the anemia on ART is 2.74 compared to the ones on D40 and tenofovir. This is much higher than the other antiretroviral drugs. Now here again, it is being shown that zidovudine group and non-zidovudine group, you can see the difference. The severe anemia developing in 42% compared to just about 2.8% in non-zidovudine group, and anemia at 6 months, 36 and 52 at 12 months in zidovudine group compared to just 14% and 12% in patients on non-zidovudine ART. So this is an Indian series. Here again, zidovudine was being given to almost 1250 patients. 16% developed anemia. Severe anemia occurred in 8%. Mean duration of fall of hemoglobin 3.6 months. And 94% patients developed anemia within 6 months of therapy. And again, macrocytic here was prominent, 58%. Rest of the patients at 42% had normocytic normochromic. Some patients required bone marrow aspiration, and importantly, normocellular in 18, and dysplastic changes were observed in 8 patients in myeloid line and 7 patients in erythroid line. So dysplastic changes occurring, and otherwise normocellular marrow in patients on zidovudine induced anemia. So we encountered this problem in children also. Within 1 month, out of 4 cases, that 14 of the 43 eligible children were started on zidovudine based therapy, and 4 were shifted to stavudine because of anemia. Within 1 month, 26 days, and 6 weeks, 6 months. These are the time duration when anemia developed in these patients. Very early data from Kalavati Children's Hospital itself. So I think we can skip this. We have talked of so pathogenesis of zidovudine induced anemia. There is selective hypoplasia, and there is maturation arrest. So several times one can see the bone marrow is found to be hypercellular, but there is maturation arrest at the level of intermediate normoblast. Megaloblastic changes could be there, and importantly, erythropoietin levels are found to be increased in several patients. And in fact, this is important to know because erythropoietin is, by certain groups, erythropoietin is being pushed as treatment for zidovudine induced anemia or anemia of chronic disease. So we have to see that if endogenous erythropoietin levels are high, then the erythropoietin therapy, exogenous erythropoietin will not be useful in these patients. So moving further on, thrombocytopenia. We all might be aware that thrombocytopenia could be the first manifestation of HIV infection, and there are several publications of this type. The ITP kind of picture appeared in patients, and then when the patients were investigated or on follow-up, they were found to be having HIV infection. There's a beautiful series from Kalavati Hospital itself, published by Dr. Praveen Kumar. This is of 173 children, 34, that is 19% had thrombocytopenia. So it was isolated thrombocytopenia in 31, and 3 patients had the other findings as well. So platelet count ranged from 4,000, as low as 4,000 to 140,000. And there was no correlation of platelet count with CD4 counts, however. ART duration and persistence of thrombocytopenia, you can see at 3 months of ART, and then at 18 months and at 30 months, it goes down gradually. At 30 months, only 1 child persisted to have thrombocytopenia. In the rest of the cases, it improved. So importantly, 12 children who were asymptomatic for thrombocytopenia had good platelet response to ART. 6 symptomatic children showed a varied platelet response to ART despite significant increase in CD4 count. And one can see the mortality was higher in thrombocytopenic patients compared to those who were not thrombocytopenic. This is beautifully illustrated in Kaplan-Meier curves in this study. So prevalence of thrombocytopenia in and determinants have been studied in other studies, and you can see here in ART naive patients it was 64% compared to the treated ones, only 7%, a statistically significant difference. With the viral loads, undetectable viral loads, the prevalence was 15.8. Viral loads high, then the prevalence is 34.1. Again, a significant difference. And with CD4 also, as the CD4 count is less than 200, I think this is the other way around. The CD4 count less than 200, the prevalence is 33%, and more than 200, it's the 16%. Again, a significantly different. Viral load and ART exposure were significantly associated with decreased risk of thrombocytopenia in this study. So what is the pathogenesis of thrombocytopenia in HIV? Platelet production and destruction, they both were studied in this study using isotopic methods, by which one can see where the pooling of the platelets is occurring, if at all it is being done. In most of the recently infected patients, that is the newly infected patients, the thrombocytopenia is due to accelerated platelet destruction, something like ITP, and platelet hyperdestruction in these patients is predominantly in the spleen. Platelet hyperdestruction is seen approximately 1/3 of the patients with more advanced disease, and these are the patients, if they are not responding, then maybe splenectomy could be useful because it is the splenic sequestration which is causing the thrombocytopenia. But in most patients with AIDS-related complex of AIDS, thrombocytopenia is due to platelet production defect. And here one should look at how this should be treated. Splenectomy is less likely to help in these patients, and it's not generally advisable to do splenectomy for low platelets in these individuals. So pancytopenia, one can see here anemia prevalence we have discussed, thrombocytopenia also, and leukopenia or lymphopenia I also reported in nearly quarter of patients here in different series. And relationship of cytopenias with the disease progression and advanced clinical stage has been studied. In this study, the multivariate logistic regression analysis, severe immunosuppression, and WHO stage 4 HIV disease were significantly associated with increased prevalence of cytopenias. Similarly, in another study, multiple cytopenias remained independently predicting CD4 count less than 200. Incidence of these abnormalities increased in another series in patients having lower CD4 count. This is from Jammu. Anemia was more common in untreated groups whereas patients on ART had higher incidence of leukopenia only. A significant relationship was observed with anemia. This is absolute lymphocyte count and thrombocytopenia with CD4 count. So all these cytopenias, they are related with severe immunosuppression, high viral loads, and low CD4 counts, and higher clinical stage of HIV. Bone marrow has been done occasionally in these patients to find the etiology, and you can see here hypercellular marrow in 63%, hypercellular marrow is actually with maturation arrest, hypocellular in about 20%, megaloblastic changes nearly 23-24%, and bone marrow suppression of single lineage erythrocyte, granulocyte, and megakaryocyte suppressions have also been seen in patients with HIV infection and different cytopenias. Dysplasia is also known, and it could be trilineage or bilineage, monolineage dysplastic changes. And the AFP granuloma have been encountered in bone marrow of these cytopenic HIV infected patients. Histoplasma has been encountered, and notably erythrophagocytosis. We are diagnosing this condition in clinical hematology more often than earlier. So this is also noted in about 6.5% of the cases. This is a series from India, Pandey et al., published in 2011. Just to tell you this megakaryopoiesis and histoplasmosis. In fact, myelofibrosis has also been reported to occur. This is Ira Shah and her colleagues published 3 cases with bicytopenia or pancytopenia. One of them had myelofibrosis. And this is again one case from our own Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital, a 4-year-old girl with neutropenia and thrombocytopenia and splenomegaly. She had grade 3 myelofibrosis on biopsy of the marrow because the marrow aspirate did not give any results. She was treated with ART as well as a low dose thalidomide and corticosteroids, which is a known treatment for myelofibrosis in adults. And she showed complete resolution of cytopenias with this therapy over a period of time. So this is as far as we see the anemia, the other cytopenias, thrombocytopenia, lymphopenia, and bone marrow changes. Now let us look at what happens to the hemostasis in HIV infection. Is it tilted towards bleeding or is it tilted towards thrombosis? It's very easy to do the PT and APTT in these patients, and they have been found to be significantly prolonged in HIV patients. And in this study by Raman et al., only APTT showed significant inverse correlation with CD4 count. None of the parameters showed statistical significance on comparing HIV patients on ART than those with not on ART. This is in this study, while in others, this is a study from Africa. The combination ART naive individuals had a high PT compared to high PT and APTT compared to their counterparts who were on ART. You can see the prevalence, PT differences here, 7.2 compared to 13.8, and APTT 59.7 compared to 55.3 in patients who were not receiving ART and who were receiving ART. These were the differences observed. This is from a series from Lucknow. Again, this is on adults actually. They observed prothrombin time to be raised in 36%, APTT raised in 50% of the patient. And they also looked at the naturally occurring anticoagulants, and they observed that mean protein C activity was 76%, while we say that above 80% or 85% is normal. In controls, this was 110. So this was a significant difference, but the protein S activity was maintained compared to the controls. And they also looked at high homocysteine levels, and they found them in 80% individuals. So clearly the low protein C activity in presence of high homocysteine levels, they could be labeled as having a prothrombotic state. So recent literature, actually it's a review. This review article writes the literature describes incidence of thrombosis, particularly in adults ranging from 0.26 to 7.6%, pulmonary embolism and deep vein thrombosis, and increased cardiac events. They have been seen in patients who are HIV infected. Protein S deficiency is the most consistently observed coagulation abnormality in HIV infected patients. The prevalence is reported to be as high as 76%. Greater prevalence in those with CD4 count less than 200 compared to those with higher counts. And anti-protein S antibody have been noted to be more prevalent in the symptomatic HIV infected patients. And another marker, that is a marker of platelet activation, that is soluble P-selectin, is also noted to be elevated. So these are the factors which make HIV infected patient to be having a prothrombotic state, more likely to develop thrombosis. So use of PI was associated with thrombotic events, and Indinavir use has been adjusted odds ratio of 2.4 for the development of PE and DVT. And notably, the use of aspirin, the further episodes of thrombosis could be prevented in HIV infected patients if they had any thrombotic events and they were prescribed aspirin. Further episodes did not occur. In children, this is a study which is from India. You can see 42 newly diagnosed patients. They looked at the parameters prolonged PT in 30%, prolonged APTT 23%, protein S83 also abnormal in 42.8%, 90.4 and 83, 11.9. Increased D-dimer were observed in 83%, and antiphospholipid antibody was also found, both IgG and IgM, but lupus anticoagulant was not found. So these abnormalities correlate with advanced disease, endothelial dysfunction as a result of infection is one mechanism by which the patient becomes prone to develop thrombosis. Hepatic dysfunction due to HIV or other infections or drugs leads to abnormalities of procoagulants and anticoagulants, and immune mechanisms are responsible for antiphospholipid antibodies. So in these children, when we looked at after 6 months, the things improved. Though the PT APDT changes were not PT, in fact, slightly worse than earlier. APDT was lower than what it was at the beginning, and importantly, the D-dimers changed. So in patients with HIV, is milder subclinical form of DIC continues, and that leads to high D-dimer levels and consumption of the factors, and that probably leads to PT, APDT being increased. And when you give ART, the D-dimers decrease because the DIC-like picture that probably decreases and disappears in some patients. Lastly, let us look at hematolymphoid malignancies in HIV-infected children. So these children who are HIV infected, they are 40 times at higher risk of developing malignancy than general population. And in the United States, they have seen 1 in 1,000 children per year, they have a risk of malignancy compared to normal children who have 2 cases per 10,000. So roughly 1 in 5,000 to it has increased to 1 in 1,000. So 5-fold increase compared to, and in some settings it is the 40 times higher risk is also noted. So in India, small numbers have been seen, reported in fact, of all 734 registered CNHIV, 11 had cancer, and in 4 of them, this was the presenting feature. The cases included high-grade non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Hodgkin lymphoma in 2, and a very poor overall survival was noticed. Only 4 patients survived, that is 1/3 of them. Another series, 11 children, where again NHL was more common, ALL and Hodgkin lymphoma 1. And there were difficulties in treating. Most of the cases had a lot of febrile neutropenia episodes and continued to receive the GCSF therapy. The adverse events you can see: febrile neutropenia, candidiasis, otitis, diarrhea, mucositis, CMV, enterocolitis, varicella, etc. They all occurred in these patients. So complete response just in 2 patients, and overall of 11 patients, 5 expired, 4 died due to disease itself. Overall survival of about 22% at 1 year. Very poor survival of malignancies in children with HIV infection because of therapy-related complications. So coming to the end of the talk, to summarize, hematological manifestations in HIV-infected children are frequent. Anemia is most common manifestation. It results primarily from anemia of chronic disease, deficiency of micronutrients, bone marrow hypoplasia, and associated OIs. Anemia is related to disease severity. Presence of anemia may be related to poor viral suppression and hence to prognosis as well. Thrombocytopenia occurs in 10 to 20% of the patients, and it has been reported to be the first manifestation in several of the patients. Both hyperdestruction and underproduction of platelets is observed to be the underlying mechanism to cause thrombocytopenia. We also looked at coagulation abnormalities in patients with who had HIV, both anticoagulant, procoagulant, and thrombosis being more commonly observed clinical problem, and hematolymphoid malignancies also are seen, though infrequently in children, but they carry a very poor prognosis. I must acknowledge here the last few slides on hematolymphoid malignancies. I have used the slide set of NACO on cancer in PL-HIV. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would try to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this informative session. Participants are requested to unmute themselves in case they have any questions.
Do you have any questions in the chat box?
No, sir, nothing in the chat box.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I think attendance, I don't know if it is, what is the current trend of having the attendance. 90-95 people are there attending the session.
Yeah, so this is the login, sir. Maybe around, on an average, 3 people from each login.
Oh, okay, so that's fine, yeah. So I think I would like to stress upon that particularly the anemia, the other problems like they get attention, but anemia somehow gets a very cursory look in management of several of the chronic patients. It's not only in the HIV setting, otherwise also it's not something which is very carefully looked at. But as I highlighted in these slides, it's important to look at, because anemia is not only a manifestation of this disease or a problem occurring in this disease, it might also interfere with your treatment. So as we saw that the viral suppression is not adequate if your patient is having anemia. So it may be directly related or it may be indirectly related, like if the anemia is on account of several micronutrient deficiencies, maybe those deficiencies or vitamin A deficiency, folate, B12, iron deficiency, they might be having something to do with viral suppression. That is an area of research. But important is that the anemia needs to be addressed. So we have to find out the cause and try to get over that cause by providing adequate, appropriate treatment.
Right, sir. Participants are requested to kindly unmute if they have any questions. So there
in fact, in those centers which are attached to the medical college, at least there the studies could be carried out on what type of anemia they are seeing and what is happening to this anemia over a period of time on ART. One could do even retrospective data analysis, and maybe some centers the Center of Excellence can take a lead and compile data from all centers and see the information that we have. Is it the same that information is coming from the other countries? Because the follow-up data is not available too much from India. The study from Kalavati also, it's not a follow-up data. It's actually 2 sets of patients. One, they newly diagnosed, the other who were already on treatment. 6 months on or more. So they were looked at and differences were seen in them. So it's a longitudinal follow-up. I'm sure the data is available in the centers, but it's just that somebody is sitting down and compiling it. And there is a correlation with the stunting and wasting and undernutrition. So we are collecting data on improvement of growth parameters on ART. So why not look at the associated anemia as well, and then try to find out the etiology. What is the etiology of anemia on these? So there seems to be one question
in the chat box.
How to interpret CBC to diagnose different types of anemia? This is, I think, Satish is asking from Kalavati Hospital only. So I would say that this is not actually, it can't be told in just in 2 minutes, but it's important that a lot of information can be obtained from that the electronic cell counter report, the CBC report that you have. You have the MCV out there, which will tell you it is microcytic, or macrocytic, normocytic, right? You would have neutrophil count, you would have TLC, you would have platelet count. And in some hospital, particularly in Kalavati Hospital, we even have absolute reticulocyte count available to us. In fact, the reticulocyte fractions are also available in that report. So one can see that is the anemia leading to regeneration from the marrow or not. If it is not regenerating, then the retic count will be low. So these are the things which one can look at. So by electronic cell counter, you can find out if it is anemia alone, number one, what type of anemia it is, number two, is it the macrocytic, microcytic, number three, is there any associated thrombocytopenia, what is happening to the reticulocyte count. These all, at least this can be observed from the CBC that you have.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, I don't think we have any more questions.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we can end the session, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to the participants for patient listening. We'll end the session now.